Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our final workshop of the fall term. My name is Yelena, and I'm joined here today by Chietza, and we're both academic advisors at the First Year Center. As many of you know, final exams are right around the corner, and for many of you, this might be the first round of exams that you're going to be writing. So our goal for today is to review some of the strategies that we've been discussing all throughout the term in some of our previous workshops that we've done, and kind of bring it all together and to help you prepare for your final exams. But we also want you to focus on your experiences throughout the fall term, whether it's through feedback on assignments or evaluations that you've gotten back on quizzes and midterms throughout the term, and learn from that in preparation for your finals. So before we dive into the content of our workshop, we want to get some more information from you. So we're going to ask you that you either grab your cell phone or open up a new tab and go into menti.com. It's a polling system that we use. And we just have a few questions just so we can kind of get to know you and see where you're at. So at the top of the screen here, you can see it says go to www.menti.com and use this code 105465. And we have, I think, 5 or 6 questions that we want to start off with.
And while you're doing that, Lana, do you mind, I think there's something that's beeping on your computer, Jabba or something. I think you might need to mute that or close it.
I can try. One second.
I will also do the same thing here with mine. I don't know how to mute it.
Okay, here we go. So it looks like most of us are in year 1, some year 3, and some year 4. Great, so thank you for joining us. Our next question is, did you attend our previous Preparing for Midterms workshop, or did you watch the recording of it? So we just want to know if you're new to us or if you're returning to our workshops.
Quite a few no's. This is great. We've got lots to learn today.
Yeah, I'm really happy that a lot of you, well, I'm not happy that you didn't go to the previous workshop, but it is a review of our previous workshop. So for those of you who are new to this workshop, a lot of this information is probably going to be brand new. And that's helpful for us. Then we can spend a little bit more time explaining things. Our next question is, what kind of finals are you prepping for?
And you can choose more than one for this one because, obviously some of your classes might have different exams and different types of formats for those exams. So feel free to select as many as apply. Okay, so no lab exams.
Oh, one lab exam. You spoke too soon. Okay, great.
Okay. So we'll definitely go through some techniques that can be applicable to so many of the different types of exams that you guys are writing. So yeah, stay tuned.
Definitely, because the way that you study is really dictated by the type of exam that you're prepping for. So we do have some strategies that cover different types of exams. Okay, our next question is, what's the one thing that you need to know about finals? So what do you think is important to know about your upcoming finals? There's no right or wrong. It's whatever you think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so lots of different responses here. Time management is a big one. So the bigger the word, it's more likely that more people have put that into the chat or into their response. So time management seems to be definitely something that people want to know about. Some people are saying, exam time or time to spend preparing. So we'll certainly talk about that. It's a very important one. The date and the time of your exam, obviously
Super
critical.
important.
We'll go over that information as well. So you guys have got some really good responses here, and you're already touching on some of the things that we will review in this workshop. Weight of the exam, that's a good one.
So the next question is, what's the one thing that you're most concerned about when it comes to your exams? Running out of time is really common. Like I know as when I was a student, I oftentimes felt like I needed a lot of time to review each question and then have time to go back and, make sure I answered everything, or go back and like think about the answers I provided. And I feel like learning how to manage your time during a test or an exam is really a skill that it takes some time to develop. So I can definitely identify with that concern. Poor marks, yeah, like that fear of failing or not doing well, or knowing that you have a lot riding on this final exam, that's definitely a concern.
I see a very interesting one there, technical issues.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good one to put in there. And the legitimate concern, and we'll talk about how to prepare for that. Distractions from family too. We can certainly think about that, whether it's family or roommates. Yeah, we can touch on that a bit.
I think I have one more question. So for those of you who are in your first year, this is going to be your first time writing exams. So we really want to know, like, what is it that you would like to know as you get ready for your first round of exams? And the reason that we ask this question is so that we can incorporate it into some of our future workshops, and kind of get in your heads and see what it is that concerns you the most, or what you would like to know the most, so we can build our content around what it is that you think you need. And you might have similar responses to some of the previous questions that we've had. What to expect. It looks like a lot of those are really geared towards not just final exams, but kind of how to study throughout the whole term in preparation for finals. So we did have a number of different workshops that we offered throughout the fall term, which address different topics, note-taking, reading academic text, time management, procrastination. So if you feel like you would like to learn more about it, later on, I'm going to show you how to access those recordings of the previous workshops. And you're more than welcome to kind of work through them and see if you can pick out some study tips that could be helpful for you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really great. Thank you all for your feedback. I think we're ready to actually jump into our workshop today. All righty. So your feedback was really great. As I said, we will be touching on a lot of the points that you brought up in the Menti, in terms of, time management and study skills and how to manage some of those technical difficulties. But the first thing you have to do, if you haven't already done so, mental note for yourself to do it after this workshop, is to go into Aurora and check your final exam schedule. It is listed in Aurora and accessible through Aurora. And this is a screenshot of what it would actually look like on your end. Knowing your exam schedule at this point will be very beneficial for you, because it will allow you to plan your time effectively from now on until the date of your exams, and to avoid procrastination. And you'll also want to confirm with your instructors where your exam is going to be taking place. So obviously, this is a remote learning term, so we know everything is online, but different instructors use different platforms. So some use UMLearn, some use some other platforms. So you want to know where it is that you need to log in on the day of your exam, and you want to know it ahead of time. You don't want to be doing this once the clock starts running on the day of your exam. And the other thing that you want to consider is, for those of you that are not in Winnipeg, the time of your exam might be impacted by the difference in time zones. So you also want to confirm, like, the start times for the exams are Winnipeg time, and you'll want to make sure that if you're not in Winnipeg, you know the actual time that your exam will be starting. Okay.
Sorry, if I may just add to that, another piece of information that's critical, because some courses have got TAs and some have got instructors. The name that you see on that exam of the instructor is probably who you should be contacting in case of any issues. So, of course, keep in mind who your instructor is in case you need to contact them. So the information that's provided in your schedule is very important for you to keep in mind always.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. Okay. So whenever we talk to students about final exams, there's usually 3 common themes that come up, and those are the themes that we're going to be basing our workshop on today. So the first one is time management. We're going to move on to talk about study strategies, and then how to deal. And I think Chiedza is going to start us off with time management.
Yeah, let's start with time management, because that was a popular one on the responses you guys gave. And for that, we will talk about 3 different things that could be very useful to you. So checklists, calendars, and timers. We'll start with checklists. And checklists are a tool that can help you to make your tasks smaller, specific, and more manageable. So, a few of us use different tools. Some people will like to use their phones, others might want to use something like, just to handwrite it. It's whatever works best for you. But what's great about checklists is that they force you to think more concretely about what you want to accomplish. So they help you to make these tasks smaller and help you to write more specific information, which makes it more manageable for you to work through these tasks and to actually complete them. So it's easier for you to know when that task is actually done. The more information that you put in there, the better it is. I always love this example of these screenshots that we have here, where you put the exact date and the time that you want these tasks to be done. You can check them off as you go. And if we look at the screenshot of the, I think it's an iPhone notepad there, this person actually has very specific tasks that they want to get done. If I look at like point number 2 there, it's read chapter 2 for psychology, page 45 to page 62. So this task is very specific and it's very manageable, right? So once this task is done, you can just check it off. And you can do the same for any of the other things on that list. On the right-hand side, we kind of give an example of, saying it's okay for you to write start English paper, right? But then how do you know when that task is done? How do you know when you finished starting your English paper, right? So it's not very specific, and a way to make it specific and more manageable is to actually detail that task. So I like the example just below that, which makes it a little bit better. It says they research and gather secondary sources for English paper. And you actually spend 30 minutes doing that. That makes the task more specific, and it's only 30 minutes designated for that task. And so once that 30 minutes is up and you've researched and gathered those sources of for your English paper, you actually know that you've accomplished it and you can check it off. I have to say checklists are one of my favorite tools. I think everybody in the office kind of knows this about me, because I like to actually check things off. It's very satisfying for me. So I break down my tasks into very smaller tasks that I'm able to check off as they're done. Even right now, as I'm talking to you guys, I've got my whole checklist for the day right beside me, because I find that very useful and manageable. So if this is something that might work for you, give it a go. You could use your cell phone, or you could also use a notepad to just create your checklists.
And the important thing to remember with checklists, when we asked you in the Menti, some of the things that you would like to learn more about or what you think you need to know in preparation for your exams, a lot of you said like how to study or have enough time to study or prepare like notes and things like that. So when you have a task of study for psych, for example, well, what does that mean? How do you study for psych? What does that mean for you? And breaking it down into a checklist can be very helpful because it helps you critically think about what it is that you need to accomplish. And it also helps you set realistic expectations. Like, if you have a list of like 50 items on it, it's probably not realistic that you will complete it within a 1-hour study session. Whereas if you break it down, you're able to actually be more accountable to it and kind of progress through your checklist. So this is a great tool. As Gietta said, like she's a big proponent of checklists. Many of us are, and it just keeps you on task and accountable to what your goals are for that day.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to think about how you're managing your time, right? So this is, if you're wondering, how do I manage my time? I've got all these courses, I've got things to do. Checklists certainly help you with your time management. Now, another tool that you could also use is a calendar. So calendars can also help you to put in very specific information. So you can add in where, when, and who you're going to be studying with, to just make sure that you actually understand exactly how your day is going to go, right? So again, you could write this down in your notepad, or on, like, if you have a planner. If you maybe prefer to use your phone, you could do that too. It's totally up to you. And calendars are great because they force you to think about how you're going to do these things, right? And to guess how long it's going to take you to get those tasks done. So if you look at the screenshot there of their calendar, the person's actually blocked off time, right? So that's, again, a time management tool that you can start to use, and it's more realistic when you can see exactly how your day is being used. So again, try to put as much information as possible into your calendar. So as you can see over here, like, I like this, I think the second one there, that's the Native Studies course. So we know what this person is working on. They're trying to finish their readings for the Native Studies course, and where they're doing that in the Defoe Library. Of course, right now the Defoe Library is closed, but maybe for you it's a place, maybe you have some place else that you like to read when you're at home versus doing some other work someplace else within the house, right? But it's up to you to figure out all the details that you will need to manage your time and to manage how realistically how you are spending your time in preparing for your final exams.
And the nice thing about using a calendar too is that it's not just related to your academic tasks, it's also related to the things that are going on outside of school. So if you have an appointment or like some sort of commitment or something like that, it would be noted on your calendar. So it helps you kind of think about everything that you have to do that day and how to manage your time better. Okay, so then our third time management tip for you is the tomato timer. And it's called the Pomodoro technique. A lot of you can probably relate to the fact that sometimes it's really difficult to just get started on a task. So there was this Italian guy who invented the Pomodoro technique. And essentially the idea behind it is that you use a timer, and typically we talk about it in terms of 25-minute increments of focused work time, followed by a 5-minute break or reward. Of course, the 25 minutes, you can adjust it. So if you feel like 25 minutes is too long or too short for you, you can make that adjustment. But the whole purpose behind it is to have a dedicated start and finish time where you have steady, focused work time without any distractions or interruptions. And then you reward yourself with a short break, and then you repeat it. The reason that the 25-minute is recommended is because in some previous studies that were done, it showed that 25 minutes is just enough time for a lot of first-year students to concentrate without needing a break. And it's also enough time for your brain to kind of get over the pain of thinking about the task that you have to do and getting started on the task and get into the flow of doing it. So 25 minutes is a good starting point, but as I said before, sometimes it can be too long or too short for students, and you can definitely adjust that time. But you know, with time, with anything that you do, as you exercise it more and more, you may not even need the timer anymore. You just find that you are able to kind of work through the flow of getting started with a task and not being interrupted and kind of completing it. The nice thing about using a Pomodoro timer, or any sort of timer for that matter, is that with a lot of tasks related to your studies, it's hard to kind of see the reward in them. Like, usually the reward is when I finish the course and I finish all the coursework and I get my final break or my final grade. But in this situation where you're using the tomato timer or the Pomodoro, the reward actually comes every 25 minutes or however long you set your timer for. So it helps students stay motivated and rewarding yourself for the time and effort that you've put in, not for completing the task, but for the work that you've already put in. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope that that's something that you do try. We've had some great feedback from students who've tried it. There's a lot of apps online. I think one of them is called the Forest app, which is sort of a similar concept where you grow a forest and you set a time, or you grow a forest on your phone and you set a time during which you don't want to be interrupted. And if you touch your phone within that time period, it kind of kills all the trees in your forest. So the incentive is to let your forest grow rather than use your phone, which for many of us is a huge distraction. I don't know, Gietta, do you remember any other names of any apps that we used?
Yeah, I think we had one called Tide. Am I mistaken? Something along those lines that was also very popular. I'll have to check online, but I think it was called Tide. It was another very popular one students would use to use the Pomodoro technique as well.
Yeah, I always use the Forest one, but there's so, you can Google it, and there's so many that kind of serve the same
Yeah.
function.
The other thing that I love about the Pomodoro technique is that it helps a lot of students deal with procrastination. I think we all at some point procrastinate about doing some tasks, or we spend so much time procrastinating while doing other things. So for instance, maybe you're on your phone, just scrolling through TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is, right? But if you actually make that a reward in those 5 minutes and give yourself, okay, 5 minutes of social media time, right? That's the reward in it, right? So you've actually factored in a reward time, and then you can actually give that to your working time. So feel free to use this technique. It really is very popular with a lot of students. So now we will move on to study strategies. And again, we've got 3 that we will discuss because there are many, many different study strategies that we can talk about. But we're going to concentrate on these because there's a lot of evidence-based research that shows that these are super effective study strategies for students, especially when you're in your first year. We recommend these 3. So we'll start with distributed practice. Now, how many of you have ever crammed something and just thought, oh, the exam is tomorrow, in 2 days, I can get through all the course material in, a day or the night before, right? I think that's a technique that a lot of students have used, especially in high school. But in university, obviously, we find that this doesn't necessarily work the same. University requires a little more application, so cramming is not going to get you very far. So distributed practice means really just spreading out your studying and spacing it out in a repetitive manner so that you don't have to, cram your material. So the way to think about it is just do a little bit every day. And so we'll give you a few examples of how you can sort of plan this out. But the key thing is that we're trying to avoid cramming because it's not as effective. So as you can see over here, we have the schedule of a crammer, right? So this person has got, for example, the Arts 1110 exam coming up on Friday, and they spend the 2 days before studying for that. Then on Monday, they've got stats, so they cram for that. And then the next day, they've got another exam. So it's really, if you think about it now, this person's actually running out of time. If you look at how much time this person has spent on the biology 1020 final exam, that's less than a day because they have not planned ahead of time. So it is very important that you plan ahead of time, and we're trying to avoid the cramming and trying to get into the habit or the practice of actually doing a little bit at a time, which is great for your learning and great for you to actually, make bigger strides. The thing about cramming is that it results usually in short-term gains. So you actually lose a lot of information very quickly. So easy come, easy go. But when you spend more time with your course material and you actually spread it out and spread out your studying, I think we'll move on to the next slide. You actually find that you are able to retain information a lot better. So we strongly recommend distributed practice, which is, I think this diagram that we have over here has got really good, it's a really good example of distributed practice. So instead of spending big chunks of time, focusing on just one thing, we recommend that you have short, repeated study sessions with breaks in between and multiple sessions. So each course over here is obviously represented by a different color. And you can see that this student is actually studying a little bit of everything throughout the week, right? So when the final exam comes, it's actually more of a refresher of all the different material, let's say the day before the exam, but they've actually been learning a lot of this material throughout. This is the most one of the more effective practices that we have. Our brains learn much better with short study sessions, as Yelena mentioned, with the Pomodoro technique, and absorbing a little bit at a time is very helpful for us in how we also learn. So if you're thinking about how you're managing your time, this is a good technique to keep in mind. Just try to do a little bit at a time, and it actually helps you when you come back to it again. I know sometimes students worry about forgetting stuff. You think, oh, if I study one thing and then I drop that and then move on to the next thing, I might forget what I learned. Actually, a little bit of forgetting is a good thing. The way we learn is that we forget and then we review it again. And each time we review, we forget a little bit less. And each time we review, it makes our memories stronger and last more effectively. So really try to think about how you are distributing your studies between now and exam time and preparation, obviously, for exams. And think about how you're using the rest of your term now in preparation for exams instead of trying to cram it all in.
And this is also one of the strategies that we really emphasize in our preparing for midterms workshops. Obviously, the sooner that you implement this study strategy into your everyday study routine, the more benefit you're going to see. So if you're just getting through the term by cramming for midterms and quizzes and tests and things like that, as Jietza said, you only get a very short-term gain because a lot of that information is lost. Whereas if you practice distributed practice throughout the whole term, by the time you get to your final exams, that information should be cemented in your memory because you've been reviewing it on a regular basis throughout the term. Now, that's not to say if you haven't done it, you're doomed. Definitely not. You have lots of time, but like with any skill, it takes time and it takes practice to kind of adapt some of our previous strategies that, maybe like cramming that we are comfortable and familiar with, and adopt something that's different. But as Jietza mentioned, this is definitely a very popular and effective study strategy that we encourage you to try out. The second study strategy that we are going to be going over today is called interleaving. And essentially, interleaving just means adding a little bit of variety or studying multiple subjects at a time. So like with cramming, people and students tend to think that they learn better when they study just one subject at a time all the way through. So that's called blocked practice, and you see it on the right-hand side. So if this is a 4-hour period, the students study just one subject in that entire 4-hour period. But actually, it's better for your long-term learning and for your energy and for your attention and your focus if you spend shorter chunks of time on subjects and interleave your studying. So rather than spending 4 hours studying Arts 1110, you would spend an hour on Arts 1110, an hour on stats, an hour on bio, and an hour on environment. And I think I mentioned it before when I was talking about the Pomodoro, but the reason that interleaving is effective, especially when you use, I just used an hour for this example, but when you use 25-minute blocks, that's especially effective because a lot of studies that examine university students demonstrate that you are most productive and focused in the first 25 minutes of your study session. So if you're spending 4 hours studying one subject, it's likely that only the first 25 minutes have been the most productive for you. Whereas if you interleave and you add variety, you're getting brand new 25 minutes of productivity and focus every time you interleave. So again, this is a very popular study strategy. And I'm not sure if any of you have tried this before or if you usually practice blocked practice, but this is definitely one that you want to try out for yourselves. Another way of thinking of interleaving is adding variety within one subject. So if we look at, well, the previous slide was different courses. So we had 4 courses that we were interleaving within one study session. But in this example, we are interleaving for one course, Bio 1410, which is anatomy, but we're interleaving different subjects or different kinds of problems. So this is helpful because it simulates your exams. So in your exam, you're not going to have like the first half of the exam with just talking about or questioning you or testing you on cardiovascular system. During a test or an exam, you're going to have mixed up questions about a variety of different types of systems. And so interleaving different types of subjects within one course will allow you to prepare yourself for this scenario during the exam. And it also forces you to kind of think about what is this topic that I'm studying? What system am I looking for? Rather than automatically knowing, oh, right now I'm looking just at the digestive system. So we learn more when we're kind of forced to think about similarities and differences between ideas, not just the similarities, which is why interleaving within subjects can be very effective as well. And another way that I like to think of it, and I really like this image, is when you think about your workout routine. So block practice would be, spending 1 hour at the gym just doing sit-ups. And if you think about it, what your goals are for your fitness, doing an hour of sit-ups at the gym is probably not very effective towards meeting your goals. Whereas with interleaving, you're spending the same amount of time at the gym, but you're doing a variety of different exercises for your overall like health and fitness and agility. And so you will have much better results than doing just one type of exercise for the same amount of time. And in this next slide, we just have an example of how you can interleave within one study session by studying different subjects throughout the day. So you see you have your kind of day mapped out here between your commitments, courses, and study sessions that you've booked for yourself or you would like to use. And here you can make use of short breaks in between fixed commitments. So that means, in between classes, if you have a short break, you can make a note or a checklist for yourself of, for example, here, watch and write notes for psychology video lecture. So that would be one subject, psychology. Then you can study different areas of a subject within a session. So again, in your next study session, you are creating flashcards for Bio 1410, which would be a variety of different topics. not just cardiovascular, but digestive and muscular systems as well. And then lastly here, you have study different subjects. So you have some tasks related to a kinesiology course, an anatomy course, psychology course, and nutrition. So you have a lot of variety throughout the day within your different study sessions. Okay.
Hey, right. So let's move on to our third study strategy. Over and over again in research, practice testing, also known as retrieval practice, is shown to be the most effective of any study technique that you can use. It is much more effective than just rereading and rewriting or highlighting your notes. So practice testing is more effective, and we certainly recommend this as a study strategy because it helps you to clarify what you know and what you don't know, because you're testing yourself on course material, right? And it gives you a more objective idea of what you need to focus on. Practice testing is actually, it actually helps you learn and to remember material well. Profs don't give tests just to evaluate you. It's also to see how you are doing. So it's a good technique for you to try out. Being tested on things also makes you remember those things a lot better. It's actually the most effective way of learning something, but it's obviously also best to use in combination with other things, right? We're not saying with all these techniques, only use one. Try to mix it up a bit and see what works for you. But we certainly recommend testing yourself and testing yourself on things that are not just comfortable to you, right? If you create easy test questions for yourself and you give yourself easy A's, that doesn't guarantee that when you write the exam, that the test questions are going to be exactly the same. So there's more than one place or one way to get to test yourself. And you can create question banks, sometimes with other students, or you can even use other resources too. So we've come up with a few different places where you can find test questions or how you can create test questions and just test yourself, right? So you could review old tests and exams. Some profs actually give this material out. So if you can ask some of your profs, if you haven't, maybe you can ask for practice tests or practice exams to get an idea of what to expect when the final exam comes up. And you can use those to see and gauge what you know and what you don't know. We've also included a few others here, including flashcards, which are very popular with a lot of students, quizzing each other with friends and classmates. If you're maybe taking a writing exam, you have to practice the writing, actually writing the test, right? Especially if it's timed. So if you have a timed writing exam, try to actually simulate what the exam is going to be like. If you only have 45 minutes to write a paper, try that out and see how you do during that time. Do you cover the main and important points, or are you scrambling, or are you still running, going around trying to figure out what to do? As well as solving textbook problems as well. A lot of courses come with textbooks, and at the back of most of those textbooks, there are also questions that you can try out to see if you've understood the material in the textbook. So there's definitely more than one way to test yourself, but we strongly recommend that you do and use that technique, which can be very useful.
And for those of you that in the Menti mentioned that, one of your concerns is not knowing what to expect on the final exam, if you've had midterms throughout the term, you can definitely rely on your experience in the midterm, because likely final exams are going to be somewhat similar. I mean, you want to confirm that with your instructor, what to expect on the final exam, but learn from your experiences with the midterm. So what did you feel? Did you feel prepared? Were you well rested? Did you have technical issues? These are things that you can try and avoid ahead of time and kind of troubleshoot ahead of time. But also use your midterms as a question bank. So review the questions that were asked on the midterm. How does your professor ask questions? Where did you lose marks? Did you ever follow up with your professor and ask them, I thought this was the correct answer and here is why. Explain to me why this was the correct answer. I'm oftentimes surprised when we speak to students about, you know, how they're doing in the course, and when they've had feedback on midterms, students many times don't go back to their TAs or their instructors to ask why they've lost marks. But how can you improve your studying and, you know, kind of identify areas that you need to maybe spend more time learning if you don't know where you lost marks or why you lost marks? So remember, a part of your instructor's role is not just to test you and to lecture, it's also to provide you feedback and guidance, especially during office hours, to help you be successful in the course. Okay.
So just to touch on one other thing, I know you kind of mentioned this earlier. It is important to create an ongoing question bank, right? A lot of these things, I know we've kind of mentioned that these are techniques that we've introduced to students who came, let's say, to our midterm, preparing for midterms workshop. But it's also it's a good way to think about throughout the term, what are you doing? What habits are you forming, right? So for some of you, this might be your first term, but even think about these techniques for next term as well, right? You can start building your question bank even for next term as well. Let's say you're in a SPAN course and you know that eventually you're going to be tested on like it's a cumulative exam, right? You want to come back to those questions rather than actually having to build a brand new question bank a few days before the exam. So start building your question bank now so that you can have these questions ready for you prior to the exam to practice.
And so we have a couple of practice questions for you. I'm gonna be introducing them, and maybe Chiedza, can you monitor the chat because I can't see it right now on my screen, but we're gonna need some of your participation.
Yeah.
So I think we have two questions that we kind of wanted to use as an example of how you can create your own study questions or practice questions. So there's two examples here, and we're gonna give you a little bit of time to kind of read through each one of them, and then let us know in the chat, which one do you think is the better practice question and why? And you can just put one or two, and then your explanation as to why, which one you think is better and why. And since I can't see the chat, maybe Jet, you can let us know once answers start coming in.
So, okay, one person has responded so far. Okay, so most people are saying one. Okay, one. So some people actually put here because the choice is more descriptive, it's more relevant and informative. Others are saying it's more clear and more detailed. So yeah. Lila, can you tell us which one is the better question?
Yeah, so question number one was the better practice question. And mainly because it's more realistic than the other one, more likely to show up on a test and an exam. It really forces you as the student taking the exam to think about, you know, the differences, especially when you have combination types of questions, like where it says E, for example, a combination of A and D. It forces you to think about similarities and differences. It's not a very surface level type of question or a definition. So it forces you to really understand the material, which is what you want to get out of your practice question. You don't want to make it too easy on yourself because the exam is not going to be easy. You want to go into it kind of understanding the content and being able to speak to it and identify similarities and differences. This is our second one. And this one is actually asks, which one is the better flashcard and why?
So flashcard 1 or flashcard 2? Okay, so we've got 2 people responding so far. Anybody else want to share the thoughts? Okay, so most people are saying flashcard number 2. It has a visual, it's easier to remember, it's more concise, yeah, easy to remember, yeah. Can you show us which is the...
Yeah, so this was a bit of a trick because they're both actually good flashcards. And remember, flashcards are used as a study guide. But there's reasons as to why, you know, both of them are good. So with the second one, which uses more the images, it's great because it's very visual. And I think, you know, we just, as humans, we just appreciate learning information visually. So sometimes it helps students with memorizing things rather than just, you know, words or text. And it forces you to kind of put all the information together into the bigger picture. The first one is a lot simpler, but it also forces you to, you know definitions and know the different functions of the brain, for example. And so therefore, you know, you can kind of use them really together. You can use the visual guide to identify different areas of the brain, but then you can use something like this to identify the different functions of those areas.
Mhm. With flashcard number 2, you are thinking about the different areas of the brain in relation to other areas, right? So you're thinking about all the different parts and their function too. Whereas with flashcard 1, you are more focused on what is that one area, what does it do? Not necessarily in relation to all the other parts of the brain, but specifically that part, right? So that's the way, they are both right, they're both correct, but it's just how you are thinking about bigger picture compared to focusing on a very small or context.
Yeah, definitely. Great.
So for that, there again also apps that you can use. One app that's popular is called Quizlet. A lot of students use that as well. It's very easy to use, very simple to use, and we've had quite a few students let us know that they use Quizlet for testing themselves and creating those quizzes. So just to summarize, practice questions should be as complex and difficult as the questions your tests and exams, questions on your tests and your exams, okay? Focus on small differences. So the ones that are the most likely to blur together on an exam. So small differences are important. Force, practice questions also force you to recall and retrieve the information rather than just giving information. So it's more about application and not just, just spitting stuff out, right? You're forced to actually recall and retrieve that information and give it a bit more meaning.
Thank you. So we talked about in the beginning with the Menti how a lot of your concerns and what you've brought up is really related to areas of how to study and how to manage your time. Like these are the most common things that we oftentimes hear from students that they struggle with is time management and how to actually study. So through the Academic Learning Center, students are able to book appointments with tutors. This is a free service. And I'm going to give you a short tutorial of how to do that. So if you go from the main U of M website, you can go under academics and then go directly to Academic Learning Center, and that will take you to their homepage. So they offer a variety of different types of resources, including tutors, workshops. Speaking of workshops, I mentioned that we did run a number of workshops throughout the term. So they're all here, and you can see that there's recordings for previous workshops that we've done. So you can definitely access those if you feel like that's an area that you'd like to strengthen or learn more about. But as I mentioned before, one of the great benefits of connecting with the Academic Learning Center is that they have tutors. So through their main page, you can actually make an appointment with a tutor by clicking right here. And their tutors are available until the end of the term. However, after the last day of classes, which I want to say is next Friday, if I'm not mistaken, they will just have reduced availability. So you don't want to wait until the last minute. You want to start connecting with a tutor as soon as possible because you're going to benefit most from it. The schedules that are available on their website show you the schedule 4 days in advance, and you can book up to 1 hour per week. So usually it's like 2 30-minute sessions. So it's very easy to access their resources. All you have to do, if you've never seen this page before, is to register for an account, and you will have to use your U of M email address to do that. Once you've done it, I'll just log in as myself just to show you what it looks like. Give me 1 second here. So once you are logged in, this is what it looks like. So from the drop-down menu, there's different types of schedules for different types of tutors. For you, you will be focusing on 2 main schedules. The first one is the undergraduate student writing schedule, which is for writing tutors. So writing tutors can help you with any courses where you have to submit writing assignments or like essays. They can help you with thinking about how to structure an essay, how to cite properly, making sure that you are following the rubric that has been assigned to you to complete the assignment. So they're really related to any writing specific assignments. The content and study skills tutors, this is where you can get a lot of help for things such as time management, focus and attention, how to prepare for multiple choice tests, anything related to your study skills is on this schedule. And then content relates to specific courses. So if we're using this content and study skills tutor schedule, this is what it looks like. It shows you all the tutors' names and the courses that they tutor in, but it's probably easier to use this function here where you can limit your search based on the course. So for example, if I needed an anatomy tutor, I would choose Bio 1410, and then you can see the schedule. So like I said, given it's the end of the term, there is less availability now just because they're so popular that a lot of appointments get taken up. But anything in white means an open appointment. So for example, on Friday, there's an appointment with Linda. You can click on this white box. It gives you a short description of who Linda is, what her area of study is, what courses she tutors in. And then you have to just provide a little bit of information about what it is that you would like to accomplish during that appointment. The more information you provide them with, the better it will help you set expectations for the appointment and for the tutor to prepare in advance of the appointment. So this is just an example of a content tutor, so specific to an anatomy course, but you can also search for just study skills. So I just need help with time management. I need somebody to help me create a study schedule, things like that. All the tutors are trained in study skills. So you see that they have a lot more availability. So again, if we use Alina, for example, just a different tutor. So you see that she has a different bio. This is a 3rd-year student, also in the Faculty of Science. And then again, you have your areas for concern and what it is that you'd like to accomplish. And all the appointments are being done remotely at this time. So this is a free resource. A lot of times, many students don't even know about it, but we do encourage you to take advantage of this resource while it's available to you, because it can really help you, start learning some of those skills that will help you not only for these finals, but for all of your courses to come as well. Is there anything you wanted to add, Chietza?
No, I think you did great with that. That was a lot of information there.
Okay.
No, nothing else to add. But I think obviously I do believe that the Academic Learning Center is a wonderful resource. Please explore this. It's covered in your tuition anyway. You're paying towards this. So try to use these resources as much as possible.
Yes, and I'm just making note of the time. I'm sorry, I think we're going to run a little bit over, so I hope you're okay with it. But we'll try and kind of speed through the rest of our slides. We don't have too many, but they are important.
Yeah.
So our next slide is In our previous workshops where we talked about midterms, as you know, remote learning is a new territory for all of us as advisors, you as students. So we really wanted to kind of understand what it is that students are being challenged with. What are the difficulties related to remote learning? And so this is a screenshot of a previous Menti that we did in a previous presentation. And we looked at the results and we kind of divided them into two areas of concern. The first one is related to study strategies. So these are things like time management, managing a heavy course load, motivation, concentration, attention, and so on. The other side really focused on like that self-care piece. So your mental health, like feeling isolated, not connecting with professors and other students in the class, like that level of engagement was very low, which results in stress and so on. So, you know, the first part of our workshop focused a lot on the study strategies and the time management piece, but we want to spend a little bit of time talking about how you can just improve your self-care and connect with others, which is very difficult when, you know, we have so many restrictions on us and you're not physically seeing your instructors, your TAs, or other peers in your class. But now more than ever, it is really critical that you do intentionally connect with your professors and your TAs, whether it's through email, office hours, or asking questions during the lectures. Communicating with them early will help you because it will answer questions. But also if you're struggling, it will help your instructors kind of know where you're at and how they can support you at this time. And you will give them an opportunity to support you if they know what it is that you're going through. Interacting with classmates can also be very different at this term because you don't have group assignments where you're physically sitting together and working through them. You're not able to talk to them in person. So again, a lot of it is through a screen, through emails. You don't actually get to know people. But there's ways to overcome that. Some of you may have, you know, group work embedded into your courses, so you might get to know your peers that way a little bit. Some other things that can be done is through the Academic Learning Center. They do have some study sessions for some first year courses. You can create your own study session by reaching out to students in your class and just saying, hey, who wants to study? And, you know, just get a Zoom going and study together and go over your notes and test each other. There's ways that we can kind of learn to cope with the reality of remote learning. But we just wanted to address that and just acknowledge and say that, you know, it's been a very difficult transition for many of us, I would say for most of us. So we understand, you know, what it is that you're going through. And these are just some tips that, you know, hopefully make a difference for you, or at least you start thinking about how you can make a difference for the rest of the term and for winter term. Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about how to just deal with the situation altogether. I think Dana has touched quite a bit on that. So we won't go into a lot of detail simply because we've already addressed some of the stuff. But one important one is, so the three that we'll obviously talk about is just the checklists that you need for online finals, creating a routine, and self-care. I've just put in the chat there a link to tips for online final exams. And you can follow that link when you have some free time. But I'd like you to also just hit into this checklist for final exams. I know somebody put in their technical issues when we did the Menti, and that was one of the responses that came up. So it's important for you to double check your internet connection. Make sure that you actually have this stuff set up. I know everyone's internet might seem like it's working right now, and then something might happen during final exams. Just log in way before the exam to make sure that you have everything. Have your prof's email or your instructor's email beforehand, just in case something goes wrong. And have a backup plan if your internet is unreliable. Like, are you able to connect to something else, like hardwire instead of using Wi-Fi? Think about things like that. And for sure, have your instructor's contact information. I think this is a very important one. If something does go wrong, you need to email your prof and even an advisor to just to inform somebody of what's going on. Make note of the date and the time. If something goes wrong, make note of that information. Make note of your exams as well. I think we talked about this earlier on. We showed you an exam schedule, so you need to log in and have a look at your exam schedule. Log into your exam early so that you can actually be ready when the exam starts. If your exam starts at 3 o'clock, don't wait until 3 o'clock to start logging in. Try to log in ahead of time and just be ready. Read the instructions carefully. This is an important piece, and even instructors emphasize this. There's a lot of information that's given to you at the start of your exam. Please pay attention to this, as it is obviously very important. And be aware of time limits. Different exams have got different times. Some of them actually have different times for different sections as well. So this information might also be in the instructions, but if you don't read the instructions, you might not know about this. So time limits are important. And remember to click submit. Okay, don't write your exam and forget to submit it. You need to actually submit your exam so that it's assessed and marked and graded. So these are some things that are very important. If you want to take a screenshot of this, or if you want to take a picture of this list, I think you can certainly do that. But these are things that we think you should certainly keep in mind. If you do experience any technical problems during the exams, again, please contact your instructor. Your instructor's contact information is always in your course syllabus, which is normally in Learn. So please have a look at that and find out how to contact your instructor. You can also contact IST. IST will be able to help you with any sort of troubleshooting that you might be experiencing. And their phone number is right there, so 204-474-8600. And you can also contact your faculty advisor. So these are like the primary people that might be able to help you. So it obviously depends on what kind of issue you're having, but keep this contact information in mind for all of your exams, just in case of any sort of technical issues.
And the important thing with it is, if you are experiencing technical issues, like, you definitely want to contact your professor and let them know what the technical issue is. But take a screenshot, take like something that you are able to show your instructor, this is what I'm seeing on my end. Because Giedza and I can both attest to the fact that we oftentimes talk to students who have experienced technical difficulties, and they try to describe what's going on, but we can't see it. So we can't really help them after the fact. But at least in the moment, if you're able to take a screenshot of, a loading sign or whatever the technical issue might be, it will be helpful, because then you can forward that along to your professor when you reach out to them and let them know that, there's been some challenges with your finals. Okay, so the other thing of how to deal, and that's primarily what we've been hearing from students as one of the biggest challenges this term, is that lack of a routine. So we kind of brainstormed about some strategies that might be helpful in terms of creating a routine. And of course, they're tied in with our time management strategies that we talked about before. But here they are. So the first thing you want to do is create a daily routine during quarantine. So for me, I know it was very difficult to do when we started working from home, because I had to share my office with my spouse, and I have a job where I have to talk to students on the phone for the majority of the day, and he also has to talk to clients on the day during the day. So sharing an office was a nightmare, because students could hear him, his clients could hear me and the student, and it was just impossible. So we really had to develop our own routine of how to share an office space. And for you, if you have siblings or you have parents who are also working from home, that might also affect your study routine if you have to share your space with others. So you definitely want to think about, what's been your challenges this far in terms of creating a routine and sticking to it, and start maybe addressing some of those issues, whether it's, asking for a quiet time with the people you share your space with, having signs on the door just saying, please be quiet for this duration, whatever it might be for you. You definitely want to have a routine that you think you could stick to, and that would allow you to dedicate time to studying and to your lectures, and work in a distraction-free environment. One of the things that I think would be really helpful, but again, it depends on the student and like what your preferences are, but try to stick to a routine that would be very similar if you were coming to campus in person. So this is a screenshot of a student schedule in Aurora. I know that for many of you, you have pre-recorded lectures, which means you can access them at any point. You don't actually have to be at your computer on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11:30. And from what I've heard from students, that tends to be, both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it allows the student flexibility to kind of build their day how they want to. But on the other hand, a lot of that, watching the lectures later falls into later in the day or later in the week. And then the student has fallen behind, or they're listening to the lecture, but they're listening very passively. And they're not engaged because they have 3 hours of lectures to watch versus, the 1 hour of lecture per day. So we think it might be helpful if you actually stick to the schedule that you have in Aurora, because if you were taking in-person classes, you would have to come on campus at those specific dates and times. You can't just come in and out as you wish into a class. So that might be one tip that could be helpful to you in terms of creating a study routine. And then the last thing is really thinking about your study space. So as I mentioned before, you may be sharing a space with others, in which case you have to set some boundaries, and whether you speak to the people that you live with or you put up signs, but you have to have a quiet space where you can dedicate some distraction-free time to your studies. And the other thing is you also want, well, for those of you who don't necessarily have an office or like a room where you can study, you want to create a spot that's your study spot. So for some of you, it might be like the dining room table, which during the day is used as, a table where you can eat and sit with your family, but during your study time, you can transform it into your work desk. So it's important that, your study area is not your bed, because that's just unproductive. You want to have a designated study area where I'm going to physically go there, have my books, have my laptop, have everything I need for my class, and be able to study. And that also kind of goes in line with what Gietza was talking about with the checklist, with a start and finish time. Because when you're just like laying in bed and listening to lectures, it's passive. It's not an active form of studying. Whereas if you physically go to a study space in your house, that is the area where you get stuff done. I think that's really all I want to say about creating a routine. And then our last thing is just chatting about self-care. And we are going to go back to Menti here. And we just want to hear from you. What are some of the self-care tips that have worked for you throughout this fall term? And if you need the code, again, it's just menti.com, and the code is 105465. Rest days, yep. Bedtime routine is very important too.
Mm-hmm. Hobbies, yeah, nice. It is good to keep in mind that you are still a human and need other interests and other things to do. So yeah, keep those things that help you stay sane. Those self-care items are very important. Sleep is clearly very popular, so we know that it's important for you to sleep, to get some rest. It also helps with your memory too. Exercise, yes. Yes, gyms are closed right now and other recreational facilities, but there's more than one way that you can exercise, right? Even taking a walk. I see somebody put there walking my dog. That's also getting a little bit of exercise. Think about what you can even do from home as well, to exercise and just get, your body going. Rest is definitely a big deal. Bedtime routine. Yeah, nice. Okay.
And the way I oftentimes think about self-care is, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you really have to put yourself first, and make sure that you are well taken care of, whatever that means for you. So whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, do all of those strategies that you're putting into the mentee, because only when you are doing well, you're able to dedicate time and work and effort into your studies. Because if you're not doing well, obviously other areas of your life are also going to suffer.
Mhm. Yeah, so sleep well, eat well, do what you need to do to just feel like you're able to continue. As Dan said, like you can't pour from an empty cup. This is just how you figure out how to deal with the situation. And you know what? We are almost close to the end of the term. So this is like the final push, right? Let's get those routines going. A lot of people put in they're having a routine, so that's great, obviously. So yeah, self-care is important. Stay hydrated as well. Do what you need to do.
Yeah, and that really brings us to the conclusion of our workshop. I know we went a little bit over, so we apologize for that. But we just want to thank you for joining us today and for participating, and sharing your ideas with us. We hope that, we talked about so much, but we hope that you are able to take at least one thing away, and that it will be helpful for you for preparing for your finals. And for those of you who are going through their first round of finals, best of luck.
Mhm.
And, you're going to get through it. We all did. But please don't hesitate to either stay in the chat. Jed and I are going to be here if you have any questions that you'd like us to go over, or connect with our office if you'd like to speak with an advisor, or connect with the Academic Learning Center, to connect with a tutor or review some of our previous workshops. And this workshop was recorded. It will be uploaded in a few days, just in case you want to rewatch it, or you want to freshen up your memory on something. It will be uploaded on the Academic Learning Center website in just a few days. Yeah, so thank you for joining us, and I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Thank you all.